Back in February, I was joined by Katie Amarose, and we did an episode called Heart Speaks. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, it is season 3, episode 6. Well, Katie has joined us again this week to extend that conversation further from Heart Speaks to Womb Speaks. What does that mean exactly? Let's find out how she is the creative powerhouse of your experience.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an Eastern medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your menstrual health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I'm excited to welcome back Miss Katie Amarose. She joined us earlier this season, and we did an episode called Heart Speaks. So if you have not had a chance to check out this absolutely magical human being, definitely check out that episode. But we had such a beautiful experience in that episode that I just had to have her back on the show. So welcome back, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited for our conversation today and to be back.
So Katie is, like I said, she's magical in all of the ways. And we had this really beautiful conversation in the last episode that she was on about working from, speaking from, and connecting with the heart space and how that alters the way that we experience our world, we move through it, the frequency with which we experience our life. And in Chinese medicine, there is a big connection between the heart space and the womb space. And so Katie and I felt that it was very aligned to circle back and have a conversation about this magical womb space and how important it is in terms of being spoken from. Creation comes this energy, and not just the creation of life, but the creation of our life and our creative pursuits. And, there's so many things that are tied into the energy of the womb space. And Katie, in her work, does so much around this heart womb connection, which is so beautiful. So I wanted to have Katie take us through this connection and have a conversation about how important it is in our daily life, in our spiritual health, and so much more.
Yeah. So I would love to, before we dive in to the details of this connection, I would love to just bring everyone into their body. And so if you're listening to this in a place where you're able to, I would invite you to just close your eyes for a moment and just take a couple of nice deep breaths. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just allowing these deep breaths to bring you into this present moment, to bring you into your body. Just allowing anything from your to-do lists, from work, from what's going on in your surroundings to just melt away, and just giving yourself permission to be here now. Giving yourself permission to feel the transmission of this episode through your body, through your heart, through your womb if you're able, and not your mind, knowing that this particular conversation is not meant to be processed or digested through your mind. It may or may not make perfect sense to your mind, but knowing that your body can and will receive it and that she understands. And so just taking a moment and maybe placing a hand on your womb space, a hand over your heart space. Just continuing to breathe. And for some people who might be having a hard time getting out of their mind, it might feel good to visualize an elevator and allowing yourself in your mind space to step into that elevator, pushing the descend button and visualizing that elevator taking you down out of the mind, down through your throat, down into your heart. And if you need to get out here, this is as far as you can go, that is perfectly fine. But if you want to explore, maybe visualizing that elevator dropping down even further into your being, I want you to descend down into your womb space. Taking a couple deep breaths here. And as those elevator doors open, just noticing your surroundings. How does your womb space look and feel to you? There's no right or wrong here. There's just whatever is in this moment. And I just invite you to receive this episode from here to the best of your ability. Just noticing how from this place, maybe time feels a little slower, might feel a little heavier in your body. And maybe you listen to the whole episode with your eyes closed, with this hand on your heart and this hand on your womb. And just allowing these words, whatever they may be, to pour over and through you. And allow yourself not to maybe remember them or hold on to them, but just knowing that your body is receiving this transmission. And so from here, the womb, this magical, wonderful, powerful, potent part of us as women, right? That crosses through all of our different bodies. We have a physical womb. Some of us may not anymore. We have an energetic womb. We have an emotional, we have a spiritual womb. And this womb space is truly the portal within our being that goes across time and space, that goes across dimensions, that connects us into our Mother Earth's womb, our Goddess Mother's womb, our Cosmic Mother's womb. This is a portal to so much more than our human experience. And she has such rich wisdom and magic to bring to our lives if we can just allow ourselves to create that connection with her. And what does that entail? That first requires us to have stillness, to have space, to begin to establish that relationship with her. And she is this on the physical level, this hollow organ. And if any of you are like me and you have bags around the house, as soon as there's a bag, what happens to it? We fill it up. We put the pile in it. And so often our womb space can be that storage center in our body where we store trauma, where we store pain, where we store anger, where we store all of the emotions and just kind of stuff it down. And so in the beginning, when we're trying to tap into her, tune into her, it might feel really unpleasant. It might feel like, after maybe if you clean your house anything like I do, and you end up storing all those piles in the closet, it might feel like that first moment where you open the closet and you're just seeing all of those bags and piles and stuff. And you're like overwhelmed and you're like, whoa, this doesn't feel good. I just want to close these doors back up. But there is such magic that can happen. There is so much guidance and wisdom that can come through as we clear her out, as we begin to work with her, not as a storage bank, but as her divine cosmic portal within us. And as Adrienne, you mentioned in the beginning, right, that the womb is this life-giving organ. Yes, for babies, but not only babies. This is where our life force is birthed and comes from. She is our hearth that stokes this fire of life. And as we can begin to work with her, we can take her from just being centered in this sacral chakra of our body and begin to bring and breathe that fire, breathe that life force throughout our whole being and into our life. Whew. Stand back. Never know what extent of magic is going to flow into our life.
It is so beautifully said. Now you see why I wanted to do another episode with Katie. So elegantly and eloquently worded, my friend. That's it right there. That creational cauldron that we can breathe life and, what turns us on. This isn't even a sexual thing. It could be, right? You could tap into that sexual energy in terms of your turn on, but it's more than that. It's that creational energy to go after anything that you want in your life, whether that is a baby or whether that's not in the cards for you, it doesn't matter. And in my practice, I see so many people who have period issues. And I made the connection a long time ago that there was absolutely a thread. And the longer I have been in practice, the more I realize it's more than just a thread between being disconnected emotionally and energetically from this portal in our body and the way that period problems show up. So learning how, and one of the things that you said was stillness. Mm. So I'm an Aquarius and I live in my head. And I'm Aquarius sun and moon for any of you who are into astrology. So it's my internal experience as well as my sun sign. And going into my head is a very easy place to be. And one of the gifts that pelvic steaming brought to me was this first look at being able to get out of my head and take that elevator like we did in that beautiful guided opening down into my womb space. And I remember that very visceral connection when it was made. It was like, oh, wow, I am aware of a completely different energy, a different space in my body that I didn't even realize I was disconnected from. And many of us disconnect from this space out of necessity, right? We live in a culture that values productivity and doesn't work in a cyclical way. It's very linear, which is a very masculine energy way of moving through the world. And when you're task oriented and task focused, it often makes you feel like you're running 1,000 miles an hour in a whole bunch of directions all at the same time because I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. And like you can just feel that energy start to like come up and be tense and tight. That tightness in Chinese medicine is liver chief stagnation. It is literally the root of most evils. And being able to make that connection in our body and drop down into our body and connect with this womb space. And when I say womb space, I'm talking about that trifecta that Katie articulated. You know, whether you physically have a womb or not, that energetic and spiritual womb space that connects us intergenerationally across space and time at so many levels. It's a completely different experience. And learning how to speak from that space all of a sudden takes you out of that task oriented, go, drive, produce kind of environment and helps you to soften. And you're forced to become more still in order to be able to reach this center deep inside of you. And for some people, that can be very jarring when they start this journey. So I just want to kind of hold space for those who might be really uncomfortable with the idea of that kind of an intimate connection with self. Not only does it take practice, but just like that closet, there's often a lot that we aren't ready to address, don't want to address. It got put in there because we didn't either want to face it, had the bandwidth to face it because of whatever was going on in our life at the time that it was placed in the closet. And practices like pelvic steam, I have found, have been a really great way for people who are unfamiliar with this kind of connection with self to practice the early stages of learning to be still and drop into this space because it gives you a like a sensory connection with this part of our body that so many of us have completely shut down or turned off. And the cycle related challenges that come from disconnecting from that space. And then we get frustrated because those symptoms are taking away from our life, but we're still trying to move through in this action oriented way instead of being able to sit back into the stillness and go, okay, body, show me where I need to go next.
Mm, yeah. So beautifully spoke to. And yeah, so many layers to how someone could connect in. And I know a huge part of my own journey has been the work I've done with you and healing my cycle, learning what like the extent really of how my cycle affects me and how deeply ingrained the cyclical nature is as women. And I so feel as you're speaking, I just could clearly see this notion of so often we're moving through the world in an unconscious kind of ego place in our head, right? We are our personality self, which is just like scratching the surface of the truth of who we are. And then, as we spoke to on the last episode we did, dropping into the heart and how that unlocks so much more of the truth of who we are and it's so much richer, right? And life colors are more vibrant, right? We're able to express ourselves more. The creativity is starting to come up. And then to drop down another layer into this place to really feel the depths of who we are. And who we are is not Katie. It is not this personality. It is not even just this body. This body is a fraction, right, of the extent of our soul self, the extent of our authentic truth of who we are. And to this accessing this portal within our being helps us bring more and more of that in, accessing that creative energy to then co-create our lives from that place and to know that we are creatrixes of this life, that we have that power, that magic. And from that head place, right, of all the limitations that are there, of all the like shoulds and can'ts and requirements and all these pieces, to then drop into that place of infinite possibilities of I can co-create any life that I desire truly that's aligned for me. And I got a little sidetracked with that. Choosing this, going back to how we can drop in, how we can approach that. For some people, it might be through a very spiritual experience. For some people, it might be through a very physical experience of, as I mentioned, healing my cycle. For others, it might come from a very emotional place and healing some of those emotional pieces and parts. For others, it's a combination of all of those pieces. And the same way that we spoke in the last episode of beginning to drop into our heart and allowing her to guide us, we can do that same piece with our womb space. And just like with any friendship, any relationship you build, there's a starting place. And then through experience, through building trust, through building safety, it can go deeper and deeper. So I love to tell people to start in is one, to just see if you can feel her, see if you can notice her. And it's okay if you can't. It's okay if it's all completely shut down right now, completely numb, disconnected. I see so many women who just draw a line across their abdomen and from there up, they can feel in. From there below, it's foreign territory. And so that's where you're starting from, just beginning to, you can feel the things you touch with your hand. So just placing that hand on your belly and trying to breathe into her, and just seeing what you notice. And just starting with that simple of a practice. And for others who maybe can feel something going on there, beginning to maybe feel if you can feel like a contraction versus expansion with her. Feeling into asking her these little tiny questions as simple as, what do I need right now? Do I need to rest? And see if you can feel maybe a yes or a no there, or a twinge or a twang, whatever it may be. And just seeing where you need to start with that. So another practice I love to do is just when I wake up in the morning or maybe before I go to bed, or if I have a still moment in the day, just asking her, just dropping in saying, hey, like hand on my belly, lower belly. Hey, like I feel you. I'm here. I'm listening. If you have anything you want to share with me. And all that we're essentially doing is opening that door, saying, I know you're there. Maybe I can't hear or feel you yet, but I want to start talking to you, beginning to open this channel. And it might take a lot of time, might take no time at all. And just knowing that this process, it's all encompassing, right? It is the magical pieces, it is the pleasure points, but it's also that unpacking of the closet. And we don't ever do it all at once. We don't choose to, I'm going to undo all of this. We just go layer by layer and we let her lead the way. It shouldn't ever feel like digging. It shouldn't ever feel like forcing. We only move at her pace, at our pace, right? Little by little, layer by layer, whatever's meant to come up. And through each piece of that, it creates a deeper relationship with her, moving you closer to that infinite magic she holds for us.
I love that. It's so true. Like, I was just thinking about my experience as you were saying all of that. I was absolutely, I mean, I work in holistic women's health now, and I was one of those people that from the belly button down, I had no connection at all. And that was my starting place. That's why for me, pelvic steaming was helpful because it helped to create a sensory connection. Because dropping below the belly button, it was like I was dead from there down. I had no energetic connection for a few reasons. Some of it was around expressing my authentic self. It was much easier for me to get into my heart than it was for me to get into my womb. And some of it was sexual trauma. Some of it was past abusive relationships. Like there were a whole bunch of reasons that I had completely turned off that part of my body. I didn't want anything to do with it. And when I started doing this work, not only did it help me grow as a practitioner, but it helped me grow as a person. And it helped me to create a better balance between how I moved through the world because I had this very hard and fast sense in my ego brain of who I was, and yet was suffering all of my 20s with period dysfunction and autoimmune disease, as so many of us do these days. And I truly believe that a piece of the autoimmune equation is a suppression of self, a turning off of aspects of self. And our body wants us to be fully aligned. You know, we were put here for a purpose. And when we're in denial of our essence self, who we truly are, like just think about who you were when you were a little kid, things that you were interested in doing, things that brought you joy. You know, did you jump in the mud puddles? Did you create mud pies? Did you want to wear fluffy dresses and twirl? Like, you know, what made you happy when you were a young child? That is the closest part that we can get to our essence self. And for some of us who choose to become parents, we get to reclaim a little bit of that because we don't feel any social shame around being silly and doing things that we used to love to do as kids because we're playing with our children, right? But, you know, regardless of whether you choose to have children or not, when we're able to allow for play, all of a sudden we find her again. And finding her and taking ourselves a whole lot less seriously helps us find this connection with our creative source again.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you brought in the play. And as you spoke that, what I felt was this in our mind self, in our personality self, sometimes there's a lot of work that goes into being that version of ourselves in the world, that constantly thinking about what we're going to say, how we should look, what we should do. All again, the shoulds. Whereas when I feel into that connection self, that authentic core self, that like womb space self, what I feel my body do is like sit back and relax in my chair. And it just becomes this being. We are just being ourselves. We're not trying, we're not overthinking. We just are. And it makes me a little emotional just to think of that because how much of our lives as women is exhausting, is us trying and doing, and just to feel that relaxation, that like leaning back into myself. And then to imagine that walking daily my life as that. And I feel it's important to also bring in this piece of our womb space, that dropping into her, that being in that place. There is so much cultural conditioning that brings us out of her. There's so much cultural conditioning as women to essentially be like smaller men, smaller, potentially less hairy men.
Yeah.
And what does that do? That takes away the magic and the enormity of what our energetic spiritual womb space and our physical womb space really does for us as human beings. We are not men, as I'm sure if you've been listening to this podcast, you have gathered through all of Adrian's amazing content. We are cyclical beings. We are not on the 24-hour cycle of men. We are not, well, I don't want to talk about what we are not, but what we are is so much more. And so through this cultural conditioning, through our life journey, through periods being something that maybe we're taught to be ashamed of, through them possibly holding all of that pain through PMS symptoms and cramps and just wanting to get away from our womb because it's just something that's causing us pain, that's maybe interfering with how we can live our lives, that's causing us potentially weeks of disharmony in our lives. Well, as I say all that, it makes perfect sense to me why we may be cut off, right? And why we may be used to and think that all that's possible is the life experience we have been living. And through my own journey with healing my cycle, not just healing the work that I've done with Adrian with the steaming and the herbs and the acutonics and all those pieces for my cycle, but just learning about what my cycle truly is, what my hormones are doing, what my cyclical nature is, how it affects every single aspect of my being. Through that journey, it has been so empowering to see, oh, like when I'm tired during this chunk of time, or when I do this, or when this is hard, or when this is whatever, and to have a reason why and to know and to begin to be able to tune in to allowing my body to lead me. And then to tune in to not having this conflict with my womb of saying, why do you cause me such pain? And you just make my life so hard and whatever it may be. But instead of saying, wow, look at all that you're doing for me. Look at all that my life could be as I make friends with you, as I allow you to lead me and guide me instead of trying to stuff you in the closet and go against you. And I think many of us have this thought, if only we learned this stuff about our own bodies when we were little, right? If only we grew up with this knowledge and wisdom.
Oh man, if I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody say that, I'd be a really wealthy woman. But it's true. It's so true. Like, we are taught that our periods are our enemy. We normalize negative symptoms because they are so collectively common, but we're not taught what is normal and what is not. I did an episode with Angela Cristrino earlier this year, and it made me think about what you were talking about, the shame that we hold around not being uber productive and, not hitting everything on our to-do list. And, all these things, like if we sit down on the couch and it's the one break we've taken all day and our partner walks in the door and we look at them all horrified, like, oh my God, I, I swear I did this and this and this and this today. And I've been so busy. Like, but you caught me in the one moment I sat down. Like, we internalize that stuff because it's so deeply entrenched in our culture to constantly be moving. This is a Western culture problem. This is not an all over the world kind of thing. There are other cultures that seriously understand the need to slow down and to rest and to be still and to honor the energetic changes of a bleeding body. And I created Body Basics because so many women, we don't know what we don't know. We weren't taught this stuff when we were young, right? Body Basics is to teach you just that, the basics, so that you understand how these changes happen in your body every month. I took it a step further and created cycle productivity secrets because you can be productive, but you can do it in a cyclical way. And like you said, the gifts that we're given in each phase of our cycle, our brains are wired for certain kinds of tasks as our hormones change. When we embrace that and don't try to swim upstream against that,
Mm.
we don't get tired. We get to shine our brightest, and we're working in harmony with the gifts that our cycle gives us. And then our womb doesn't complain at the end of the month because we haven't burnt the poor thing out by trying to do too much.
And not only does she not complain, she's radiant. The
Yes.
only way, and this is a key Divine Feminine Mysteries concept, is the only way for us as these beautiful feminine beings to truly step into our deepest authentic expression is with rest, is with stillness. And for whatever reason, that can be the most challenging piece for us to step into. We're like, just give me the task, just tell me what to do and I will do it. It's like when we're told that it's not about doing, but being, it's not about adding anything, but possibly subtracting things from our list, from doing less and less. And sometimes there's that initial period where we have to really drop down to heal that burnout. That's not to say that our whole lives will be that we can only do one task a day or one, whatever it may be. But through that process, through that stillness, through that recovery and rest and healing, you begin to tune in into and tap into a whole different expression of who you are, the truer expression of who you are, the you that does remember how to play and be goofy and be creative and be joyous and radiant. She still exists. She's just buried a bit under these things. And as we begin to tune into that and become aware of that and re-meet her, it begins to be this one, I strongly believe that version of ourselves is what this world needs. In my own life, I know that when I am her, everyone in my life is in a better place and receiving the best I have to offer and is just feeling that fullness of what I can bring to the world and life. And I think about this all the time of if I feel better as her, if everyone in my relationship circle feels better when I am her, and if being her means doing even less. And truthfully, the people who love me are completely okay with that because they want her. And it just goes all of this conditioning, all of these beliefs, right? Of we're only worthy if we are superwoman, if we do everything, if we blah, 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 blah. And that helpful piece too of, well, I want to show my love to these people. I want to do more for them and all this may be. But in doing all of that, we are bringing this burnt out, disconnected, pathetic, sad version of ourselves who cannot fully receive the love that is coming her way, the magic and wonder of life all around her, really makes me question and hopefully makes those who are listening question if that is a pattern that wishes to continue. And it might feel insurmountable. Well, how do I shift that? How do I do less? And this is one of those places where dropping into your womb can be extremely helpful and letting her tell you when you've done too much, letting her tell you when you need to rest, when you need something, when some need needs to be met, when you need nourishment, because it can be really hard for our mind place to know those things. We can get so caught up in the shoulds or the project or whatever it may be. But if we drop into our womb, she will tell us without a doubt what it is we need in that moment. And if we can begin to allow her to be that guide for us, we can see an immense amount of transformation in our life and how we're moving through the world and how we're connecting in our relationships and our job and our businesses across the board.
Sometimes what she tells you is scary too. Yes.
Yes.
I just I just want to put that out there because there are moments where you drop into that space and you're like, well, I don't know if I can do that. Like your body goes, you need to rest. And your brain goes, I don't think that's possible. But notice the key word in there. I don't think that's possible. When we work from a body speak kind of space, allowing our own space, the creative energy of that space to speak through us, sometimes the craziest things come out. And they're really transformative and beautiful on so many levels. I'll give you a really great example. So I have always been a hyper independent kind of person. And I know there are a lot of us that are. And a lot of that comes from trauma of some sort, little t or big T, doesn't matter. And we remain hypervigilant and we try to control as many things as we possibly can to keep ourselves safe. So we think we're the only ones that can load the dishwasher. We think we're the only ones that can fill in the blank. Okay. And delegating seems like an insurmountable challenge. One of the things that I found was one of the healthiest things I ever did in my relationship was learn how to delegate. And I felt really guilty about it at first because I felt like I was just adding more to his plate, which was already busy. Well, mine was busier. And there were moments that I resented the fact that I was always the one that had to handle the things or certain things. And I had a moment on my journey connecting with my own room space and learning to listen to her and be able to drop into this space and see what she had for wisdom for me. And in that dropping in, I realized that delegating more was going to be a key part of what I needed to do to heal myself physically and emotionally. And then my ego brain got involved and was like, "Whoa, I don't know if we can do this, Adrian. Like, this is a big ask, right? What is he going to say? You're putting, so much extra on his own plate and all of these things." Well, what I didn't realize is that in some small way, I was stealing some of his masculine energy because the doing, creating, task oriented, action oriented aspects of the way I was moving through the world didn't allow him to step into that masculine energy, which is so inherent in him. And I'm married to an alpha male Marine, and I, in some small way, was emasculating him, and I hadn't even realized I was doing. And I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just was so used to never being able to rely on a village or ask somebody for help or relying on anyone. I mean, this went back as far as childhood with we have a class project and nobody would do the project. And so Adrian would be up until like midnight, the night before the project was due, freaking out because she just couldn't let the project fail. Right. So this was really deeply ingrained in me. If I don't do it, nobody will. And it was a protection mechanism because I was a self-made person. I was the first in my family to go to college. Like, I just felt like if I don't do it, it won't get done. And that has been a challenging theme for me a lot of my life. But I didn't realize how not being able to drop into my womb space was literally affecting my relationship. And we have a beautiful relationship. It wasn't that we didn't, but allowing him to step into that action oriented space and say things like, "Hey, dear, this needs to happen." And just think about when you come home and you're like, "I've had a really bad day." And you just want to like tell your spouse, like, or your partner, like all the things. And then in true male fashion, if you're in a male female relationship, he tries to solve your problem for you. Like, just think about that for a second. How irritated we get when he tries to create an action plan to solve the problem. But that's how they're wired, is to solve and create a solution to make you more comfortable. So I was essentially not allowing him to do what his body, his brain, his energy is wired to do best. Yeah. I just took care of it because I always had to. So in one of these moments where I was connecting in with my womb space, I was like, all right, girlfriend, what do I need? Because obviously I'm in a place where what I'm doing isn't working for me. I don't feel good in my body. I feel burnt out. I'm starting to feel resentful. Does any of this resonate with anybody? I'm sure it does because so many of us find ourselves in this situation. And I remember saying to him, like, here's this thing that needs to be solved. And I didn't offer any solutions. I said to him, what do you think? And then I sat back in my feminine energy, in space, rest, stillness place, and waited for an answer, which came very quickly. And he stepped right into that space and was like, okay, well, we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this. How does that sound? Now we were co creating. It was so beautiful. And it really did start to change the dynamics and the energetic relationship in our marriage because I no longer was doing his part and my part. I was just doing what was mine. And I was sitting in my feminine energy and I was allowing myself to be still for a moment to give him the opportunity to step in. And it has completely changed in learning how to do that. My cycle started getting healthier, our relationship dynamics in terms of decision making and how we went about doing things. We always did things well together as a team before, but I just had been one of those people. I'm going to take it on. I'm going to take it on. I'm going to take it on. And my plate got way too full. And then I got pissy about it. How many of us have done that? You're like, I can do it. I can do it. I can hold it all. I am superwoman. And then you're like, oh shit. Now I'm overwhelmed, overloaded. I'm way stressed out. I'm really tired and I hate everyone. Like, how many of us get into that situation? So, I mean, I'm shaking the finger right at myself as I'm saying this. Like, I used to do this too, right? And I know that so many do. I see it in my practice all the time. And that creates undue stress, which shows up in our interpersonal relationships. It shows up in our relationship with self. We literally don't even give ourselves enough time. One of the most simple things I used to start to do in the morning while I was on this part of my own healing journey is I would put one hand, like we did at the beginning. I put one hand over my heart and one hand over my womb. And I just tried to clear my mind and picture that I was in a white room with nothing to look at. And I would ask myself, what do you need today? Yeah. How do you feel today? And just those two simple questions, sometimes I was really surprised by what came up for me. Sometimes I would sit there for like 20 minutes and be like, okay, girlfriend, are you going to like answer sometime soon? And then I knew that I was getting into my head and I'm like, no, we can do this again. Right. So it does take practice. And even as somebody who works in this space, I have actively had to work on being able to drop into this space. So it's absolutely not something that happens overnight. And some of us come to it with different levels of skill to be able to do that. Some of us were raised in families where we were taught to shame the fact that we were a bleeding body. I remember I worked with a client really early on in my career who had to hide the fact that she was on her period from her partner because she would get reprimanded and scolded for her normal monthly bleed. And she had internalized that so deeply that when her bleed would come, she would have like a mini panic attack. So there's such a wide spectrum of connection with understanding of and relationship with our womb space and our creational energy. But also think about when you put on an outfit that makes you feel fierce as fuck and you stand in front of the mirror and you were like, you girl are the hottest ticket in here. And you just know that you feel beautiful, you look beautiful, you don't care what anybody else has to say about it because you feel radiant that day. That's the creational energy of your womb space showing up in your life.
Mm.
You can create so much and be so electrifying from that space, from that energy. I had a soul sucking W-2 corporate job at one point in my life that I literally felt like I was drowning and I wasn't fulfilling my soul's calling and my cycle was a mess and long story. But anyway, I would dress and do my hair like I was going out every single stinking day because I'd look at myself in the mirror and I felt like I was a sovereign being. I was sitting in my power and that it wasn't being taken away by this job. And I could go into said job and just ooze this energy everywhere because I could feel that turn on happening in my body. And I didn't make that conscious connection until many years later that intentionally choosing things that made me feel beautiful, that made me feel successful and strong and healthy and smile at myself in the mirror when I went to leave. Like I wasn't dressing for anyone else except myself. But that energy became so palpable and so powerful in terms of being able to create my experience. And it was coming from that creational place within. So we may not know how to get there at the beginning part of the journey, but we have seen glimmers of it, even if we aren't consciously looking at it that way, of how to be able to drop into and tap into that incredible portal of creational energy that we have inside of our body. We've seen glimmers of it. And the more we allow ourselves to sit in stillness and connect with this part of our body, whether it means we have to put our hands over it or pelvic steam or, whatever it takes in order to be able to have that connection and come home to that space, the most beautiful things come out of it. And I left that job and I started my practice. And now here I am. And it all came from that spark of creational energy in my womb space, long before there was ever a baby in there.
Mm.
And so you are the creatrix of your life. And if you are looking for that vibration to change or the relationships around you to change or the career change, or you've been feeling stuck and you're not sure what direction to go in, this is the relationship to begin with.
Mm. I just invite everyone, just take a couple breaths here. Just breathe in all of that juiciness Adrian just shared. You just touched on so many divine feminine principles in both those stories, and just allow your body to receive that transmission. And I know so many of you are probably sitting there going, yes, I have a similar experience, or like, my body is vibrating right now. This just feels like truth. Like, yes, this is it. And that's because this information that we're talking about, this womb space magic, this process, these feminine principles of surrender, of beauty, of pleasure, all this is encoded in your DNA as women. This lives in your womb space. And as you begin to tap into this is your divine birthright to have all of this, to know all of this, to live in all of this. It's already in you, it's already there. And yes, conversations like these might begin to spark it, they begin to bring that remembrance to the surface. But know that you have all of this within you. This is not just for some women and not others. This is for you. If you're listening, this is extra for you. Ugh, so beautiful. And I just am also feeling really called to weave in this piece of going back to the cultural conditioning going back to what this womb space is, going back to what sexual energy is. And so many of us have been conditioned and taught that this energy we're feeling is sexual energy that is just for the purpose of sex. It is just to be used with another person to be transferred into this physical act of sex. But sexual energy is life force energy. Our womb space, our yoni, this whole area is not just for another person, it's not just for that physical level component, but it is this creation energy. Sometimes with that, there can be some fear, there can be some turning away from these feelings of turn on, from navigating this place, as Adrian talked about, getting that dressed up place for work and feeling her radiance and like bringing that in. That can be a little scary sometimes if you're still in that conditioning of that the sexual energy is just base chakras and it's just for those purposes. And with that, there can be so much around the fear of other people, all of that stuff, right? We don't need to get into it now. But knowing that this energy is pure, this energy is for you before it's for anyone else. And that this energy, it is stoked, it lives in our sacral chakra and our base chakras, but we can breathe it up through our whole being. We can have these higher expressions of that. We can use it. If you're feeling tired, stoke this life force energy, breathe it through your body, allow it to come up there. If you have a project you need to work on, bring it there. If it is a baby that you're, wanting to bring it there. You can bring it to any of these, and being in this energy, being in this radiance, first and foremost, that is also for you. That is for you to feel that way, to move through the world in that way. That also is your divine birthright. And then if it happens to, bring joy to other people or whatever it may be, awesome. But first and foremost, does it bring joy to you? Does it make you feel alive? And reconsecrating that connection to this energy and to these centers of your body for you, however that may look. Wow, I feel like we could go on forever and ever. This topic is just leading into so many more juicy things, so much more I want to talk about. So before our call, I had pulled an oracle card from the Sacred Rebels deck for all those who are listening. My intention and hope was that it is the transmission that all of your higher selves need you to receive at this point, and that it helps just weave in all that we've been talking about and bring it back in to you and your experience and your life. And so the card that came in is number 30, the perfection of your life. And for those who don't know how oracle cards work or have never received this group sort of card pull before, I just invite you to again close your eyes, to place your hand over your heart and over your womb, and allow these words to flow through and over you. You take what's for you and just leave whatever does not resonate. Knowing that even if it doesn't make sense to that mind place, knowing that you're receiving the wisdom you're meant to. The perfection of your life. Have you ever seen a storm pictured from above? It can appear to be so beautiful and elegant. This is certainly different to the ground view, which can be quite a violent experience. So too, there is great beauty in your life now. However, at this point in the natural process, you may be experiencing it as anxiety inducing rather than beautiful. You may sense it as internal chaos. You may feel it as something that is waiting to erupt from within, as a restlessness or an anxiety that you cannot quite articulate, but sense vaguely nonetheless. Perhaps the chaos is fully fledged and a person or a situation in your life is causing all kinds of havoc, upheaval, or change and uncertainty in your world. Whether the chaos seems subtle, strong, internal, or external, this oracle brings you the same message for you. All is unfolding according to a perfect higher order. You are currently enduring a cosmic spiritual storm, which is having an impact on you. It is clearing things out, ruffling feathers, and preparing you for that lovely, super fresh, uplifting feeling that one experiences after the storm has finally passed. If you cannot believe that there's anything happening, even at a subtle level, because you feel stuck, denied, bored, thwarted, or stale, this oracle brings you a message also. No matter what appears to be, in truth, there is only the unfolding, creative genius of the universe. You are not forgotten. You have not been looked over. You have not been denied, found wanting, or rejected as unworthy. The storm that needs to erupt is in your own heart. Do your liberating rain dance. Rage, weep, pray, dance, paint, or sing. Express whatever is needed, however is needed, to exercise the blocked energy in your heart. Then you will call on the powerful protection of your life path. Powerful perfection. My apologies. As it aligns for the next creative turn of the spiral of life. Once again, you will trust and directly experience the flower of life unfolding within you and around you.
That is such a powerful card. And like Katie said, she pulled this ahead of this episode. So we hadn't even taken the deep dive into this conversation yet. And it so beautifully surmises what the beginnings of this connection with self can bring up, feel like. And it's an invitation to recognize that you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And what is unfolding may feel unsettling, different, not always comfortable. I can absolutely resonate with that. There have been aspects of my own journey with this that have not been the most comfortable, and I've confronted some shadows in my own closet that I finally dealt with. And some of them are an ongoing dance of something comes up for me and I have a different perspective and can recognize it and choose differently in terms of how I respond and I dance with it. So thank you, Katie, for sharing that beautiful message with us, because this is something that, rewind this episode, listen to it again, and it will hit you differently every time you hear the words of that card and practice dropping into this space. There's so much magic for you here and so much healing on so many levels. Mhm. Any final thoughts before we close this episode?
Yeah, I would just love for you all to really hear me when I say you are divinity embodied. There's so much wisdom and magic and beauty that lives within inside of you. And the world needs your unique medicine, your unique beauty, expression. And it would be a gift to all of those around you, to yourself, and to the world for you to allow yourself this journey within, to allow yourself to truly embody all of who you are, your truest essence self. And I look forward to getting to witness you in that and seeing you as we walk down the street, just each of us ablaze in our own radiance. Much love to you all.
So, as we sign off of this episode, if you are interested in working with Katie, how can people get a hold of you?
Now you can reach me at my website, spiritremembered.com. I'm on Instagram, the same name. I have a free temple program on Facebook. It's Temple of Remembrance. And yeah, I look forward to if anyone wants to go a little deeper or talk more about this, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for sharing your magic and your wisdom with us today, Katie. And much love to you, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.